The scent of jasmine still lingered in our bedroom, a haunting trace of the woman who once filled it with warmth and joy. Now, it reeked of betrayal. Emma had always adored jasmine. It was her hallmark. It had become, I realized, a bitter reminder of the sham our marriage had devolved into. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Late-night meetings at work, weekend seminars in other cities. A distant, faraway look in her eyes whenever I tried to connect. I wasn't oblivious. I saw the signs, but I chose to ignore them. I loved her fiercely, recklessly, maybe even foolishly. I clung to the fairy tale we'd spun together, the one where we'd grow old side by side, bickering over trivial things and laughing at our quirks. Then came the confirmation, the kind that tears you apart from the inside out. A forgotten, unlocked phone, a string of texts dripping with affection, words and pet names she once reserved for me, now directed at someone else. My stomach churned, my head swam. A fiery anger seared through my chest, leaving a hollow, aching void in its wake. It wasn't just the betrayal itself. It was the cruel indifference with which she'd dismantled our life together. The vows we'd exchanged, the dreams we'd woven, they meant nothing now. But the part that haunted me the most, the detail that still made my fists clench even months later, was the night of her so-called college reunion. It was a tradition, a gathering of her closest university friends held at our home every year, a ritual of cocktails and endless gossip. They'd always been a smug bunch, but I tolerated it because Emma adored them, and I adored her. That evening, though, something felt different. The laughter was sharper, the glances more conspiratorial. I poured myself a whiskey, its bitter burn matching the knot tightening in my chest. Emma was at the center of it all, as usual, her voice vibrant and commanding as she regaled her audience with stories. But her stories had taken a new tone, cutting, sarcastic, always managing to include a dig at me. "Oh, Jason," she said, rolling her eyes as her friends roared with laughter. Her words stung, not for their humor but for their cruelty. This was no longer the woman I'd once cherished, the one I'd trusted with my heart. She had become a stranger who seemed to revel in tearing me down in front of an audience. "He's so predictable," Emma said, her voice dripping with exaggerated sweetness. "Every anniversary, it's the same thing, flowers. So boring, right, girls?" A chorus of high-pitched laughter erupted around the room. It felt like watching a pack of hyenas circling their prey. Each comment was a well-aimed jab, cloaked in the guise of playful banter. She mocked my cooking, my taste in music, even the way I slept. With every insult, I felt myself shrinking, a little more color draining from my face as my heart sank under the weight of shame. But the worst was yet to come. "You know," she said with a giggle, swirling her wine glass as she gestured toward me, "sometimes I feel like I'm living with a houseplant. He just sits there, watching TV, so passive." That was the breaking point. I felt something inside me snap. The hot, reactive anger I'd been holding back cooled into something sharper and more calculating. This wasn't hurt anymore. This was resolve. I was done being the quiet, dependable husband she could ridicule on a whim. I took a deep breath, my gaze sweeping across the faces of her friends. Their amused eyes glittered, waiting for me to react, to crumble under their collective judgment. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm, measured. I rose from my chair, the rhythmic click of my footsteps echoing across the hardwood floor as I ascended the stairs. Each step felt deliberate, purposeful. I wasn't thinking about Emma anymore, not really. My mind was on the plan. Upstairs, I opened my laptop and navigated to a private folder I'd created weeks ago. Inside was everything: screenshots, recordings, messages, pictures. A meticulous timeline of her lies, pieced together in moments of desperation when I still foolishly believed I could save us. Now, it was my weapon. I copied everything onto a USB drive, ensuring it was ready. Then I grabbed the small projector I kept for occasional movie nights. With a deep breath, I headed back downstairs, the weight of my decisions settling into something resolute. The room fell silent as I entered, the laughter and chatter dissolving into uneasy whispers. All eyes turned to me. "What's that?" Emma asked, her voice tighter than before, a flicker of unease crossing her face as she noticed the device in my hands. I placed the projector on the table and set it up, my movements deliberate. The tension in the room grew palpable, her friends shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "You've had your turn, Emma," I said evenly, not looking at her. "Now it's mine." Emma's face faltered for a moment, but she quickly plastered on a condescending smile. "A presentation?" she asked, her tone dripping with false amusement. "Exactly," I replied. My voice flat, I set the projector on the coffee table, pointing it at the blank wall. Without hesitation, I plugged in the USB drive and pressed play. Silence. A heavy, stunned silence fell over the room as the first message illuminated the wall, crisp and undeniable. "I can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Jason is so dull. He'd never understand the kind of passion I've found with you." A sharp gasp broke the quiet. Melissa, one of Emma's closest friends. The messages continued, each one a brutal truth laid bare. Pictures followed. Emma with another man, her hand on his chest, their faces close. I recognized him. A co-worker of hers, someone she claimed was just a friend. Then came the voice notes, whispers steeped in promises and lies. The room seemed to shrink with every damning piece of evidence. Gasps replaced laughter. Mutters of disbelief swirled, where amusement once lingered. Emma's face transformed, her confident, mocking demeanor crumbled. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and the blood drained from her cheeks. She looked like she'd been struck, the weight of the truth crushing her into someone unrecognizable. Her friends, once complicit in her mockery and cruelty, now sat frozen. Their smirks vanished, replaced by shock and perhaps a touch of shame. They had been her audience, her enablers. Now they had front-row seats to her reckoning. The room's energy shifted entirely. I remained silent. I didn't need to say anything. The evidence did all the talking. The slideshow ended abruptly, leaving the air thick with the echoes of betrayal. Emma broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, her face buried in her hands. The confident, sharp-tongued woman who had taken delight in belittling me moments earlier had disintegrated into a fragile, cornered figure. Her friends, usually quick to rally around her, stayed frozen, their expressions torn between awkwardness and judgment. No one moved to console her. No one knew what to say. I stood there, calm and detached. The anger that had once burned inside me had cooled, replaced by quiet vindication. I had been humiliated, but I had taken my power back. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and steady. "I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of a dramatic fight. I'm not going to yell or scream. The evidence speaks for itself." I glanced at her friends, their faces still etched with shock. "I think it's time you all went home." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked upstairs. Emma's sobs followed me faintly, but I didn't stop. In my bedroom, I grabbed a bag and began packing my clothes. I didn't hesitate or second-guess. This chapter was over. Later that night, I sat on the small balcony of my new, temporary apartment, gazing out over the city lights. The cool night air felt like a balm on my frayed nerves. For the first time in months, I felt free. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Divorce, finances, and emotional healing were still to come, but I'd face it all without the burden of her betrayal weighing me down. I had reclaimed my dignity, found my strength, and let her cruelty fuel my resolve. The jasmine-scented house was behind me now, a painful memory. It was time to breathe fresh air and move forward.